Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Emerging Technology webinar series. Today's presentation is Flexible Automation for High-Mix Gear Manufacturers. My name is Mary Ellen Doran. I'm the Director of Emerging Technology for AGMA. This meeting is being taped, so for those of you on the live event, please put your questions right into the chat. For those of you listening on demand, please send any questions to Doran, D-O-R-A-N, @agma.org, and I'll work to get you answers. This webinar has been made possible by generous donations through our members. Special thanks today to Gleason and Reischauer. Today's presenter is Justin Griffin. Justin's been with Universal Robots for over 6 years and is currently the Machine Tending Segment Manager for the US and Canada. Justin focuses on enabling end users and solution providers with new and advanced solutions for robotic automation for their machine tools. Prior to joining the company, he worked for a robotics integrator and custom machine builder. Thanks, everyone, and I'll turn it over to Justin.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that introduction and for the opportunity to be here today. It's hopefully going to be a nice and insightful presentation for you guys. If you have any questions, like you said, would love to get them, especially if you have something specific or a unique machine, or just as an application comes to mind as you're thinking about the different things that I talk about. Feel free to fire it over, and yeah, we'll be happy to take a look at that at the end. As you said, my name is Justin Griffin. I've been actually with the company that might have been a little dated for just over 7.5 years. I'm heading towards my 8th year in the coming 2025 year. I've spent a huge amount of time over the last probably 3 to 4 years, specifically in the machine tending space. And so I've gotten to know a lot about what manufacturers look for. The reasons that they don't buy is important too, right? As much as why they do and why they decide to automate their machines and look to automated processes throughout their plant where they can be successful, either improving their or optimizing their production environments, et cetera. Few just real simple outcomes that I'd love for today for you guys is to first just make sure we all start off with a great foundation of collaborative robots. I'm going to introduce, if it's a little bit basic for some of you guys, if you're very familiar, awesome. If you're not, we'll bring you up to speed real quick. I'm going to then talk about some of the roles that these robots play in the manufacturing environment. I'll go through quite a few, even outside of gear manufacturing itself. You may have other operations in your facility that I just want to make sure I touch on, such as welding, metal fabrication. You may be doing other things throughout your facility. So I definitely will touch on those. And then I want to share a little bit about our customers and the ways that they've been successful in deploying these types of automation throughout their facility. And then I'll lead you quickly through how I would get started, right? If I were to listen to this and have some questions, this is like how I would do it. And I'll lead you through some good thought processes of that. I think it's important to look at our story. You know, me personally, when I look at a company, doesn't matter what it is, from a house or, you know, your wife, family, you buy products based on sometimes like knowing the story, like knowing the foundation of that company. So, you know, and you end up having some greater pride for the products you use or the products you utilize, et cetera, in your life. And so I want to share that with you because I think it's really important and critical where we came from as representation to like why we're still here today and very successful. And we began with asking a few very important questions. And I love what's stated in the very, you know, middle of your screen: automation for anyone, anywhere. So back in the early 2000s, our company began with asking critical questions, just kind of criticizing and scrutinizing what had existed for the last couple of decades in robotic automation. And so they asked, you know, questions of why was automation not built for anyone? Why couldn't it be deployed in more places across the facility? So we really did, I think, try to create and establish a product that was innovative, revolutionary, rather, that allowed people to really say, okay, you know what, man, this is able to be a more utilized tool than I previously thought capable. And I'm talking about robots. And so we really did ask some really great questions at the very beginning. And I'll go through some of those in a little bit more detail in a little bit. But this is sort of a global view. Some of it changes a little bit because we do have a very large footprint. We grow our teams tremendously as our company continues to establish itself throughout the globe. And so you can see our corporate headquarters there. You can see our global offices. And it's important, I guess, to just kind of show you guys up there is Unza, which is in Denmark. That is where our company is based out of. That's where all your robots are manufactured in. Really amazing headquarters, by the way. The cool thing is we use our robots to manufacture our robots. I think a lot of people may say the same thing, but I think it's really great how we've grown and learned how our own robots have been applied, the different solutions that have been, and we kind of adopt them into our own process. So at this point, there's a few things that are show up on your screen here, and it's about what makes us different as specifically to our brand and collaborative robots. We're on our sixth generation. We've been around a really long time. I think we like to think that or believe that we created this entire industry of collaborative robots. And so at this point, throughout our tenureship, we've installed north of 90,000 cobots. It's a staggering feat and something we're very, very proud of. I hope to surpass that 100,000th mark real soon. But all it may stand to say for you guys is we are a very established company with a great user base, with lots of casing examples of how we've deployed these robots, and we've been able to learn from that. Through that, we've acquired 34% of the market, roughly, with a huge partner network of over 1,100. And as I already kind of talked about those global offices, but I think I just want to pull you to the bottom left there with 470 plus UR products. Now, UR Plus typically refers to our off-the-shelf type solutions where, say, you needed a gripper, you needed some pieces of software, you needed some tooling, you needed a bench, you needed all these ancillary pieces of equipment that take a robot from a paperweight, frankly, to something utilizable. That's where it comes alive in all those plug-and-play products that we've created. We have a very highly dedicated team to building out those products and making sure through testing, through trial and error, making sure that if they do get certified, that there's a good reason that we believe that that product's ready for the market, ready for you. So moving on to maybe some imagery, if I could say it that way, is on the left side, traditional versus our types of deployment collaborative. Does not mean that we don't end up behind cages and guards, depending on the application. But on the left-hand side, traditionally, and maybe even purposefully, you had to put a robot between two machine tools to justify the expenditure to be in the 150, 200,000 plus range. So in order to make that work for you and with well time or downtime on a machine or a cycle time that allows you could machine a second part or even do up one, up two kind of thing, that could be critical for you. So I'm not trying to say that that doesn't fit, but you can see that it's highly dedicated. On the right-hand side, you can see our product, which is positioned right next to another person. And so depending on your environment, this could be critical where you do not have maybe the intrusiveness or the requirement for traditional robots, which summarized here. And this is generally a general statement, right? Or general versus, so, bear with us a little bit. And so the difficult setup, we're trying to be as fast as possible to set up within your environment. So you're up and running, you're making parts, and the sooner you're making parts, the sooner you're calculating that return on investment. Instead of high programming expertise, which is something we scrutinized it, right? We looked at it really deeply. We asked, well, what could we do different? We took a path forward that I'll show you in some videos and some other demonstrations that allow you to say, okay, yeah, you can touch, you can teach by hand. That's awesome. Instead of fixed installation that had to be highly dedicated, we looked at a versatile deployment where a robot, depending on what's going on in your production demands, you may decide to shift, may decide to say, what I'm doing right now is not as productive with that product, with that system, that solution, as if I brought it over here and did an inspection, right? Maybe your CMMs are backing up. You're like, well, if I could automate that, I could clear up some space and I'll bring it back into the CNC environment when I'm required to, or when that demand's there. Just sharing that there is a vastness of versatility if things change in your production demands. Extensive space requirements, need for safety fencing, and just those additional costs. Those are things that we try to work away from as much as possible, right? Limit the space requirements and try to collaborate human to human or side by side with our robots. And obviously this is more of a benefit for those that are crowded and those shops that may be multi-generational family buildings. And so you are absolutely at the brink of the max of what you can produce in that facility unless you blow out walls. So having to reconfigure, move all of your infrastructure for your machine tools, it may not even be feasible. And that may create an issue for you identifying a place where automation really fits. So I think it's kind of important to kind of look at this, and again, nice imagery, sort of showcasing that for you guys. User friendly technology, sort of talked about that a little bit, but one thing I can say is that that teach pendant there, it comes with every robot, and one of the things that's different about it too is this free drive functionality. We created a drive functionality for the purposes of allowing you to really touch and feel your robot, to get intimately involved with training, whether it's moving it through brash or coarse movements, and then kind of refining in. And we can show you through actually just this screen here that we can position this robot very specifically, whether it's a tool position or a joint position. You could send exact coordinates where you want this robot to be or where you want it to go to. And then, of course, you can control it and jog it just like any other robot. But again, being able to touch that robot, be able to make huge course or larger course moves really allows you to set up quite quickly. Again, we'll show you that in a little bit. Looking at the product portfolio, this is the encompassing portfolio right now, but of course, we're always developing and innovating. Some of these are actually even higher payloads now with 25 kilos, 35 kilos, et cetera. So we're actually even higher up in the range than what we're speccing through this diagram right here. But it's a nice range, I would say. We're pretty happy with the last couple of robots that have come out, which are the 30 and the 20. Those allowed us to increase our capacity and in some ways even move into applications we worked well in, but work better in now, having 20 kilos, having a longer reach at 1750 millimeters. There were things like that that just allowed us to succeed. And for welding operations or for picking larger blanks and placing into hobbing machines, sometimes that UR30, the better fit. That's just the sheer weight or mass of what you're making. So just a quick kind of shout out for that product. It's an amazing product that we're pretty happy with. And kind of looking a little bit forward, it shows 75. It's at the 90 plus, but this is just sort of a nice little summary of where we're at now. I believe the first machines for hobbing were back in the 1835s and mostly in spurs. And I think it wasn't until like the late 1890s or sometime in the 1890s that we really had advanced those hobbing machines to the ability to also cut helical gears. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but the importance is that this industry has been around, importantly, for a very long time, and these machines have advanced. They've advanced even to the point where they're set up for automation. So I want to talk, through that a little bit in some detail. But I think it's important first to take a step back and kind of make sure we all agree to what we're dealing with. I think a lot of us at this point don't have to go into a deep conversation to say, yeah, I agree. It is difficult to find labor, and skilled labor is even maybe more difficult to find. There's a study here that I'll show in a little bit, but there's a prediction that by 2030, we'll be in the 2 million range for unfulfilled jobs within manufacturing. We love to talk about creating jobs and available jobs, but doesn't mean that our world actually sees that, right? We in manufacturing oftentimes have a great deal of challenge finding good labor or consistent labor. And so if we look at this here, which is from 2022, it's a little dated, but at the very top, if I can pull your attention, attracting and retaining a quality workforce was, according to the challenges voted and surveyed, was over 75% claim that they had this challenge. And so by the end of 2022, for those who had employees who had been in manufacturing, there were over 2.6 open jobs to actual like unemployed persons that had been in manufacturing. So there's more available than people that are joining or participating. We've seen, even through COVID, I've heard this so many times, that the workforce seemed to exit. They never came back. I think they found other work, and we can speculate on that, but it just seemed to have gotten more difficult, and that people made decisions to work elsewhere or to maybe go into a different type of working environment for whatever reason, or a different type of job. These are the sort of four keys summation of where we try to look in these shops between machine tending, of course. Hopefully most of you or a lot of you are here today for that. But like I said, we do, of course, span into an immense capability with welding. Material removal can be really critical too. Your deburring, your gears, if you're performing some post process operation, that can be important. And cutting, depending on what you're doing, there may be some plasma cutting you're doing, just some other operations throughout your facility. I just want to touch on that. So like I said earlier, it's not that we always fit. Depending on work holding, depending on what you're, how you actually place that blank in your machine, it may not be automatable, or it just may not be set up for it. But we try to look and start there because the advantages are tremendous, right? Increased efficiency, the hours of consistent production, knowing that if your tack time is 30 seconds, it's 2 minutes, it's 5 minutes, that you're going to be loading that new blank every single 5 minutes. And not only that, like I said, we could post process and perform inspection a bit, but having consistent quality, if a robot places a part incorrectly, it's going to do it over and over and over again. So we're not chasing these critical issues that are plaguing your facility. And I've heard it really well from a few owners that say that by having consistent production, by having something that's machine loading, unloading robotically, they find that they can have their engineers step back into the place that they do best. They're working on the business, not in it. They're not chasing around problems, which means that they're now focused on whether it's product improvements, whether it's new product features, whether it's even engineering and designing for the purposes of winning new contracts. You just see that it really does free up and allows your business to expand and potentially grow. And that's just a really great thing, of course, with a payback that we'd love to look at with you guys in your specific applications. And sort of speaking of an application, I do want to lead you through for perhaps a real world scenario. This is one that has gotten quite a bit of viewership, but I picked the Helios machine for a reason. I think that they're set up quite well, but just in general, what I'm showing here is you go from picking a machine tool to, okay, how do I automate it? And so they're typically highly dedicated feeding systems that are bull fed, which means they're not really flexible. They can be potentially intrusive, like we said, and it could take away from being able to utilize that humming machine, to do a manual operation, because pulling away that mechanized system just may not be possible. It could be, mounted to the floor, etc. So a robot also allows you to do this external processing because of articulation. It's not mechanically stuck moving in two directions, three directions. It can move in many different directions, including different stations for, say, non-destructive testing, inspection, cleaning, any sort of thing like that. So just want to show you that. And here's just a quick video so you can kind of place it in your mind what it looks like. Again, if you have something highly dedicated piece of machinery that's for a specific contract, this could be great. But if you do want greater flexibility, for sure, which I'll show you in a little bit here, we can perform this operation robotically. We may be able to even flexibly feed it the exact same way, but with flex feeders, etc. So kind of getting the glimpse into how it's currently done and the ways that we could do it differently, including feeding. Now, people like bowl feeding because you can load up a whole bunch of parts and just dump and go. There's a good advantage to that. Tray feeding does require the operator to be involved, but it allows for flexibility. So I think there is sort of a trade-off there. But what you can see is a smaller system that, if I just quickly run this video here, we can load up to 17 trays. It could be thousands of blanks depending on the size of your components. And this is, allowing you to have a large capacity during unmanned hours of the shop or, lights out. So you can sort of see there that what happens, it's a sort of an elevator. So it pulls a tray out. When it's finished, it loads it back in, pushes it back into the elevator, and it lifts up, and then again, more blanks are shown. And so the system will pull out a whole other tray of blanks. The additional process controls that I've alluded to, non-destructive testing, resonance testing, PCR, which is, PCR T, or process compensated resonance testing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Inspection, deburring. These are all things that are potentially really critical to you, and it does require an operator. So if you only automate the machine, the hobby machine, maybe it still isn't adding the value. So like, what else is an operator doing? Is it gauging? Is it deburring? Is it doing some sort of testing on the quality of your output, et cetera, et cetera? So just wanted to show you some of the things that we can do. Keyence obviously makes some great inspection solutions that our robots can place parts in front of. We can manipulate that gear front side, back side. We can even manipulate it along its axes as well. From the material removal side, we've got great partners, and these guys are very experienced in material removal. It's nice once you have a gear made. It's not like a roughing operation with grinding, right? Where you're taking a casting, which is variable. This is kind of removing that variability and having something highly specific in geometry to go into burr. And depending on what you're doing, this may even take away machine time or machining time within the machine tool. And maybe we could process that and do that operation outside so we can get on to forming, and hobbing that next gear. Ultimately, you reduce manual labor. It can be a manually intensive type of task. And so just sort of showing you some of that, I think, is important. On the cutting side, it's just expanding your guys' thoughts out there. We have great partners like Vectus that perform solutions creation for us. And so they've created a plasma cutting, which is pretty awesome, plasma cutting solution. So it increases your precision. You can send geometry or CAD to the robot, and as long as it knows its starting point as a reference, it can go cut exactly the geometry that you need into, say, a piece of bar stock, etc. Welding, same thing, right? And I think one of our owners of Higherbotics, he says it great. He's like, welders, they don't know automation, they don't know programming, but they know torch angles and they know parameters, weld parameters. And so as long as you have a robotic system that allows you to continue to place the robot at a specific angle, torch angle, and for them to be able to utilize a teach pendant and input all these different variables so that they can set up that product or that solution system to weld based on the gauge of the material, what we're welding, the materials itself, then we can have an operator actually perform that operation and set up a robot to weld. And most of our robots out there, just by the way, that are set up in the field, a lot of them are by operators, especially in the welding space. On the customer success side, I will go through a couple of examples. I think the first one, it's more of an anecdote that I want you guys to see. I think it states it really well. And Alex Corcoran, I've known him for a really long time. He made this quote, which is on the right-hand side. So I'm actually going to read it. But he says, at some point, our machines wear out and they stop producing 100% good parts. In the old reality, we would have to replace that machine. However, if we can implement this solution and inspect out the 1% of bad parts, we've just taken $1 million piece of equipment, added a very inexpensive solution to it, and potentially got another 10 years out of that machine. So I think that's really a powerful thing too, that if you do have older aging equipment, you've been hobbing for decades, you may have a piece of equipment that is starting to perform unequally to a new machine. And you may, yes, have some variation in its performance and the quality. But what if we could resonance test out, again, like Alex is saying, the 1%? Could we now have a machine tool that has another 10 years in it? It's just a thought for you guys. This one's a cool one, which is not in gear manufacturing, but it's an interesting case. Their company is called Go Fast Campers. In just 5 years, they grew to 65 employees. But because of their business, they were making a customized, very specific to a type of truck, camper or pop-up camper. So they had over 174 unique parts. Really big challenge. And so what they found was that if they could put a line of robots, which was 4 UR5s, they were getting over 22 hours of productivity, which 6 of were lights out or unmanned, or there was nobody in the shop. And so I want you to also think about that too, that if you're looking at a automated process, you can guarantee its production. You can know that perhaps you could load it up with another 100, 200 parts, and it processes those parts overnight. So now you're getting ahead of your production demand. And that could be good because for D'Angelo Marine, which is another example, they were 65 days. That was their challenge. They were 65 days behind, and they were finding that they couldn't figure out another way to catch back up. And so automating some of their processes, having the current operators that were obviously clearly dedicated still to the company, if they could perform the operation of setting up that robot and having it weld, they were able to catch up. And so I think it was a pretty cool example. They purchased quite a few, and at the end, they also converted through testing from TIG to MIG welding. And at the bottom, the result, it even says right there, they're able to weld 20 inches per minute rather than the 2 to 5 that they're welding manually TIG. And of course, yeah, you got to look at whether that fits if it's highly cosmetic, if there's something very specific with exotic, etc. that you're doing TIG for. We understand, but it's just a great example. So you guys can get an idea. I just want to run this video. It shows this is Matt Bush here in the video. He's one of the founders of Vectis, sorry, of Hirobotics. And he's going to try to set up his system in just 90 seconds. So there you can see that they have created a really cool um, app, which is a phone-based app. I was thinking about maybe showing you guys it, but because I do have it on my phone, and you can operate it. It's pretty cool. I think they try to make it intuitive in terms of the language, the nomenclature. But what he's doing right now is just doing a dry run, right? So again, well, there's no torch angles. This may not apply to you guys, but it's showing you the ability to manipulate a robot and set it up quite quickly. And he does get that off the ground in the 90 seconds. Keep things kind of moving here for us. So we've kind of got to this point where you want to get started, you don't know where to begin. There's a variety of different ways that we can help you guys out, and it really comes down to these three, I would say, main ways. The CSIs, or certified systems integrators and solutions partners, they are trying to productize something, which means that they've replicated the solution over and over and over again. They've listened to many customers' needs and demands and requirements, and they've formed and fitted it into a product. And so it's very tried, true, and tested. And I kind of like that. It's a nice way to start specifically for your team if they don't have experience integrating. And so it might be a nice place for those kinds of folks. But if you do have experience and you've integrated before, maybe a DIY approach is there. We are at Universal Robots always expanding, like we said. And so we have a great foundation at this point, and we're ever growing in terms of our partnership with direct OEMs. Obviously, there's quite a few out there, and it takes time to reach, each one of them. We've already mentioned, the sponsor today, be a lovely partner as well to work with. But yeah, just wanted to sort of share some of that go to market. And if you do decide to do it yourself, I think it, as I put here, requires technical knowledge. But we do have a huge, it's just astute group of apps engineers and trainers that can help you understand how to work through your application and pick the solutions, the components. So on our UR Plus site, we have a variety of different application kits and solutions that have been tested. And here are some of them, right? From gripping. Now, again, we're showing AirVice and Rapid Design. They're just a couple partners in the vertical machining world. But outside of that, of course, there's stands from Easy Robotics with drawer systems. I already told you about PBC Linear earlier with their elevator system that can hold up to 12, 13 trays. And ATI has been a big partner for us in the deburr world. If you decide to go the turnkey route, I think the most important thing is the quick to deploy, because it again, it's tried and true. So when it hits your shop floor, it's ready to do work, right? It's ready to operate. And so there's kind of a knowable time frame from acquisition to run, right? And to a point where you envision. So you have a vision, you know what the end looks like. If you decide to go DIY, sometimes you hit snags along the way because you just didn't know how to do something specifically. It became a little bit more complex, and you might have wished you outsourced some of that work. And so, depending on that, though, I would say the turnkey systems that we have from our solutions partners provide a really good value as well, brings down the cost, et cetera, as well. Here's a quick video. I'll show you guys so you get the idea of our robots loading, unloading. This is lights out. They are more in the vertical machining and horizontal, but just in general, it'll show you working within a machine tool. So there, we're just pointing out that we have a blow-off nozzle. Make sure we clear the work holding. Gonna pull those parts out, quick dump, back in. We'll place the new stock in. For you guys, it would be a blank. Obviously not into vices, but and we have a force torque sensor built in. So that's actually using force to push down to a very specific Newton range. So we know if we go to push and say we wanted 10 Newtons of force, but we felt 15 or 20, we know that there was something that was caught up in that work holding. And rather than machining, we'll stop the process. We'll pull out that part. We can have some sort of fail safe, right, or recovery where it tries to go back in and attempt a second blow off, try to clear, and then we'll place that part back in and see if we can't get to that correct Newton range of force. On the press brake side, here's one of our partners, Mid-Atlantic Machinery or Mid-Atlantic Automation, is the automation division that they've created. Just showing you some different applications. If you're in fabrication, just wanted to kind of share with you guys that we have some awesome solutions providers that have from the software to the tooling to the entire system for setting up your parts, in feed, out feed. Really, really cool what they've accomplished. And just sort of an overview of those kind of companies that we work with. Vibrant's a cool one there in the middle. I think that what they've accomplished for non-destructive testing could be a great one for you guys. Just by using resonance, they're able to test a product for variation. So say there's some conditional environmental changes. They can test very quickly for structural defects or issues before it goes out for further machining. So I think it's pretty cool what they've accomplished. And they continue to have, I think, a focus right on the gear manufacturing world. And yeah, that's it for me. I didn't want to take too much of your time, but wanted to make sure I got through all that material. If anybody has some questions, would be happy to take them. If you have something specific, you have a certain type of machine, like I said, that's interesting you, an application, feel free to throw that in to the chat or to the questions. And yeah, I'd be happy to try to talk through it. Really appreciate it, guys.
Well, thank you very much, Justin, for your presentation today. I appreciate the fact that you did some research in understanding more about the gear industry specifically, and a shout out to Helios. Saw one of their machines in there and you mentioned them. They're a good member of AGMA.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
For those people that want to learn more about all the different vendors that you've seen, so you did mention that there are 3 different ways that people can use your robots. They can buy
Right.
one and implement it themselves. They can use a preset partner of yours, or they can buy a turnkey solution. Is all of that available on your website?
The if you go DIY, you're definitely going to find all of our UR Plus products, all of our solution kits. Some of the turnkey may not be on there only because the solutions partner themselves has decided that they want to control that, their own messaging to the market. So I would
Yep.
say on that end, it can depend.
Okay. But if someone on the call or someone who watches this post sees something that they want to connect with, they can just reach out to you and you can put them in touch with
Please.
the solution.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And my job now I've been regional where I just covered the Mid-Atlantic, but the last 3+ years I've carried, national. So what it allows me to do is just really have a great grasp of everybody across the country, all their unique capabilities. And so depending on what fits you, we want
Right.
to fit the right partner for you.
Terrific. Well, thank you for that.